Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Caregiving Gen X Style. I'm Steve Mullen.
And I'm Jennifer Mullen.
You know, it's an unfortunate fact that the elderly are frequently the targets of scams. And even more unfortunate, sometimes they work. They can lead to your loved one losing hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the most common types of scams and how you can help your elderly loved ones avoid them. But first, Jennifer, how's your mom?
She's doing well.
Good.
Really nothing to report on the health front, which is absolutely fantastic. We did have an interesting situation that occurred this week, and that was I was over there one morning before I headed into the office to help out with a few things, and I noticed that her TV sounded funny. And of course, she is someone who has the TV on at all times.
All day long.
Yes. And in fact, she's passed on that trait to me in terms of like, I have to have the TV on to fall asleep.
I know. It drives me up the wall because I can't.
I don't need it on all night. I just need it on to fall asleep. She pretty much needs it on all night, in part because it's how she falls asleep, but also she's up and down. You know, she doesn't sleep a solid, 8 hours straight through. So, and it's company for her. So I'm over there and I'm listening to the TV. I was in the other room. She's in the living room, and I'm hearing this like clicking sound, and it sounded almost like a typewriter clicking. And Mom, what's going on? I don't know. I said, well, how long has it been doing this? And she said, oh, the last couple of days. Now, meanwhile, earlier that morning, like when I first got there, I realized she looked utterly wiped out. She was exhausted. Like, even a couple of things that she said, I won't say that they didn't make sense, but like she was really tired and she was not communicating.
She was out of it.
She was not communicating very clearly. So fast forward, I realized the TV's doing something funny, and I put two and two together, and I thought, oh, she probably was not even able to sleep last night because the TV was doing what it was doing, and she had nothing to listen to. So I was a little frustrated about that because I said, why didn't you just tell me? Like, we can get this figured out. Now, I did a little bit of troubleshooting, which is to say not very much. I checked a couple of things, enough to realize that I didn't know how to fix it. So I called you, Steve.
IT support.
I did. I FaceTimed you so you could see it and hear it. And
it sounded to me like a bongo drum.
So it was, yeah. Wow, that was
pretty good, right?
Yeah, that was really a very good impression of my mom's TV earlier this week. But anyway, I do appreciate you coming to the rescue with your IT support.
If anyone is wondering, the Roku power cord had gone bad and it wasn't getting enough power. I've never seen anything like it before, but I figured it out, swapped out the power card, and boom, it works.
Which was fantastic. I appreciate it. I called you and you were on it. You ate your breakfast, got dressed, and came over because you understand the seriousness of my mom's TV not working. So
the other thing that we need to do is remind her she has an antenna.
Okay.
And that, and remind her on the instructions on how to get to the antenna, because she could have watched probably like the Andy Griffith Show all night long or something, it would have been noise for her.
But you know what? You start switching her around back and forth. She gets off the Netflix and the Sling TV. Like, she might literally never get back to it. So that causes a whole other set of issues.
It does.
That would be going back to the technology episode.
Yes.
So anyway, but Steve, publicly to everyone out there listening, I would like to say thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For being a great partner in the caregiving of my mom. So I appreciate it. How's your mom?
She's doing great. I mean, really no big problems. There was one little incident. I don't know if I want to call it an incident, but something I noticed.
The incident.
No, exactly.
With quotation
marks.
Wasn't
the incident. Mom and I were down in the library of the assisted living facility, and it's where the washer dryer are that the residents can use. And she's been picking things out that she wants to wash on cold because she's worried. I think it's a little silly, but it is something for us to do because, I mean, honestly, sometimes we have nothing to talk about. Yeah. We're just sitting there staring at each other. It's an activity. Yeah. And then we sit in the library and, look at the books and chit chat and whatever. But while we were down there, this woman who lives basically one door down, there's a nursing station in between her and my mom's apartment, but she's basically her next door neighbor. She's relatively new. Her name is Barbara. She came down and she was in a tizzy. She was practically crying. And my mom said, Barbara, what's going on? She said, oh, I don't feel well. And Mom said, well, what doesn't feel well? She, oh, my stomach hurts and my back hurts. And I'm just trying to get a hold of my daughter and I don't know what to do. And I mean, she was in a tizzy. And my mother, Mom said, come over here and just sit down. We're going to go ahead and press your button, the emergency button, and I'll go ahead and press my button. And somebody will come down and help us. And she's patting her on the leg and she's talking to her and she's trying to distract her. And I'm looking at my mother and saying... What was
going through your head at this moment?
Yeah, I'm looking at my mother and saying, who is this woman? Where the heck was she when I was a kid? Because this is not how she acted when I was a kid. It was like, more often than not, maybe not from her, but a lot from my dad, it was just suck it up. Turn off the crocodile tears. I'll give you something to cry about.
Well,
I heard a lot of that growing up.
I think we've said before, right? Your mom is definitely not the most touchy-feely.
No. And she's sitting there patting this woman on the hand and on the leg and holding her hand and showing concern. And now I will say my mother has had some run-in with this woman. She's been having a rough time. She's relatively new. Her daughter lives hours and hours away. I don't really know the whole story exactly, but she's having a rough time adjusting, or perhaps she's in the wrong part of the building, if you know what I mean. She might be the better off up in the memory wing. I'm really not sure. I don't know her, but she's having a rough time at the very least. And my mother's been, she'll do what she does. And of course, when she left, Mom started complaining, but
but
that's her.
In the moment,
it was very nice of her. She was being so nice. And like I said, who is this woman and where did she come from?
Well, but what a nice thing to see, witnessing your mom.
For sure.
Spreading some kindness and recognizing too, I mean, who knows what was going through your mom's head? I mean, to a certain extent, she could definitely be at that point in her life too, where she's thinking to herself, if this were me and I were in this, facility and feeling scared and don't really know what to do, I would hope that someone would reach out and help me too.
Yeah, and I really do. I mean, I've said it before, or we've talked about it before with assisted living. There's a couple of different reasons you go to assisted living. There might be some kind of physical problem with you. There might be some kind of mental issue, like you are losing your memory for dementia or whatever reason. And with my mother, it's physical, and her memory works pretty well. Her brain works pretty well. And I think, she's one of, I won't say one of the only ones, but, there aren't all that many that are pretty much fully with it there. And I think she takes that responsibility pretty seriously. I really do.
Yeah, it's been
I think
great
she wants
to
take care of them a little bit somehow.
Great.
Again, I don't know who this woman is. Anyway, we do have an announcement. In our last episode, we talked about our new little mascot, the squirrel.
Yes.
And we did put out...
Thanks to my BFF, who sent us a little surprise.
We have a name for said squirrel.
Yep.
Would you like to announce it?
Again, thanks to my BFF.
Yep, it was her idea, and it was a good one.
We have decided that the squirrel will be named George.
George the squirrel.
George. Now, I love this because it comes from, and again, this was my BFF's suggestion, but it comes from the limo driver or driver
that my mother thought
your mom thought she had at one point in a moment of a little bit of delirium.
Actually, many moments. It was when she had her COVID delirium. Yeah. We heard about George, I don't know, half dozen times at least during those 4 months. Oh, well, George will take me.
So we took a good close look at the squirrel here and decided that George was a very fitting name for him.
He looks like a George. So. And obviously, I mean, I would assume with a name like George, we're going to go with a he, that it is a boy squirrel.
I think it's a boy squirrel.
And he's got his little heads. I mean, I did post a couple of pictures on Facebook. If you haven't gone there, you will see him.
Go check him out. He's sitting right here between our two microphones, enjoying the episode along with us. So, all right, George, welcome to the club.
Welcome to the show. All right, before we get into the episode, I actually have a How's Your Dad to read, which is pretty cool.
That's exciting.
And I've been hanging on to this one for a little bit, and I apologize to the writer who sent it to me via email. It kind of got pushed off in this episode, pushed off that episode, but I will say it landed in this one, and it's actually kind of perfect because it almost falls into the category, and you'll see what I mean as I read it.
All right, great.
I'm going to launch into it. So this is from a woman who wanted to be known as K, just the letter, not K-A-Y, the letter K.
K? Oh, okay. Yeah.
K.
K.
So she writes, first and foremost, thank you for your podcast. It's helpful and I feel less alone while listening to it. You're welcome, K. This was a weekend that made me think I should email Jennifer and Steve and answer the question, how's your dad? My dad is 87 and very isolated. He has estranged himself from many people. He moved to where he is now in 2018 and hasn't made very many friends. In September of 2023, he had a fall and wound up in the hospital, then in rehab. He was determined to have mild cognitive impairment. He moved back into his house but began to receive in-home caregiving, and I became his long-distance caregiver. Because I was able to talk him into signing a power of attorney after his fall, I began to work on trying to track his finances. While looking at his credit card statement, I found a lot of charges I didn't recognize. There was one charge for $425. I also found another one for $199.
Not small amounts. Yeah.
When I called his bank, I found there was another one for $149. Looking up these places online, I found out that they were medical marijuana sites.
Oh, my.
My dad is a former Seventh-day Adventist. I don't know if anybody knows about Seventh-day Adventists. They don't use any kind of drugs, alcohol, anything like that.
Right.
So it seemed completely out of character. I assumed someone, possibly a caregiver, had stolen his card. Since he told me just the night before that he suspected one of his caregivers had been stealing from him, I think I was ready to believe him. I called the bank and canceled the card. I called my dad the next day to let him know that his card had been canceled. Sure enough, he was upset that I had been monitoring his credit card. He said he had the right to manage his money as he saw fit. A few hours later, he called me back saying he wanted to talk about some things. It turned out he had, in fact, made those purchases. He was unclear of how much he had spent and couldn't say what he gained from those expenditures. He had not actually received any marijuana.
I mean, at least if he had received it, fine,
It's worth
fine,
something,
whatever.
at
You
least.
decide late in life, even if that's not been your lifestyle, you go for it.
Exactly.
But,
So my
yeah.
best guess is that he paid for being assessed. At any rate, I had to call the bank and explain there was, in fact, no fraud. What I find is that I'm exhausted and lonely. I've been trying hard to help my dad with a very light touch because I know he values his independence. Sometimes I feel like I'm banging my head against a wall over and over again. Oh, same, Kay, same. Under his state's laws, I cannot be his legal guardian because I don't live in his state. If he ever gets mad enough to revoke his POA, I will just have to sit back and watch him possibly harm himself financially. Honestly, my feeling is sometimes fine if he wants to go down that path and ends up in a bad situation. I don't care. I do talk about my dad with people I'm close to. I've read books on caregiving and dementia and some sessions with an elder care coach, and I listen to your podcast. But sometimes I wish someone would sit next to me as I deal with these things and difficult conversations with my dad. The person will be wise and experienced, and they'd help me navigate the roadblocks and let me cry on their shoulder as often as I needed to. What I want really is someone to share the burden. I know I've got it easier than many people who are stuck at home caring for a loved one with dementia that is worse than my dad's, often with less money, and with family members who have lots of opinions but never bother to give them a break. But it's still a difficult and lonely road.
Wow.
So you can see why I did shorten that up a bit.
Yeah.
But I didn't shorten it up much because it was an interesting story.
Well, and I want to say something to you, Kay. I heard sort of what you said there toward the end about, you recognize that maybe some people have it worse. That's a really interesting perspective that I would say it shouldn't negate how you feel about your specific situation. Let's face it. In life, most of the time, for most of us, someone can always have it worse. Someone can always be sicker. Someone can always have some difficulty in their life that we don't have. That does not make your specific experience any less challenging to deal with. So I would say allow yourself a little bit of grace with that, and maybe don't, try not to put any energy into saying, well, I really shouldn't feel this way because somebody else could have it worse. Sounds like a pretty tough situation you're in. And I would say, okay, so, right, your specific difficulty is not that you are living with him, which that has its own set of challenges. But I would say trying to manage something like this from afar is really challenging. It's just challenging in a different way.
It's tough. It really is tough.
The other thing I am fascinated by, and this might be a topic for us to explore at a future date, is an elder care coach.
Actually, interesting you brought that up. As I was looking through this, How's Your Dad, before we came on the air, quote unquote, on the air. I looked it up, and there are certified caregiving consultants. It is a thing that exists.
That is fascinating.
And you can look it up.
Idea.
And I think she's looked into this person, I think, hoping to get that thing that she wanted, which was basically someone whose shoulder they can cry on. And maybe they do that. I don't really know how it all works. I didn't look a lot into it. So kind of like
therapy, a tiny bit, but I'm guessing very specific.
I think it's really someone to help you navigate all this stuff. And it's we have to learn so much as caregivers, and they theoretically, I guess the whole point is they've been taught this stuff.
That is really, we need to look into that a little bit more and see if we can't find a guest. If anyone is listening
and is a certified caregiving coach or knows one, please get in touch with us. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. I mean, we know all of you out there listening feel like Steve and I are somewhat your, elder care coaches. And we take try. It. Yeah. I mean, we try. But no, in all seriousness, right? Like, this is nothing we are trained to do. We are just here talking about what our experiences have been over the last, handful of years with our moms. And we've said it many times before. We want to share with you so that you do know that you are not alone. There are a lot of folks out here, with varying experiences of caring for elderly loved ones, but official coaches, we are not. So I would be really interested.
Perhaps I should look into that for us.
Hey,
we could become certified.
We could become certified.
Ooh,
oh, yeah, I'll do that. We'll do that in our part-time.
Anyway, so let's get into our episode, which is, loosely related to what we were talking about. Kay thought her father had been the victim of fraud. We're talking about scams here, which is more or less the same thing. There are a bunch of different types of scams, and that's part of the problem. Some of them may even seem silly to us who are not old and, for instance, having issues with technology, not really understanding that these scams exist. But to an older person, they can be very believable.
Yes.
And in this episode, we want to run down some of the scams your elderly loved one may be up against.
All right. So first up, and this is one that I think a lot of people have heard of, and that is the fake lottery scam. So in this one, the target is told that they've won a huge amount of money in the lottery, and they're given instructions on how to claim the prize. And typically, the target is told that they actually need to send in some type of money in order to process the claim. I would say that it seems like such an obvious thing, right? If you didn't buy a ticket, you didn't win any money. If someone is asking you for money so that they can give you more money, you did not win money.
Right.
It all does seem very obvious, but, I totally get how someone, who's a little bit older, or, we all want to believe these things. We all want these
I want $1 million.
Right. We all want good things to happen to us, but it's the old adage. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
And I think that is the something we ought to be thinking about with all of these scams.
Exactly.
And by the way, we mentioned money, and I think this is going to come up later. I got to tell you, I wrote these copious notes some time back, but money, or weirdly, sometimes they ask for gift cards. Like they'll ask for an Apple gift card. Or the Visa gift cards or the MasterCard gift cards. And again, we see this and we're like, why on earth would we get lottery money if we send them an Apple gift card?
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but people get wrapped up in this stuff and they lose a lot of money. So it does work with some people. And,
they do.
And so, similar to that one is the tax scam. The target is told that they owe a bunch of money to the government or they're due some kind of refund. But if they don't pay money to get it, if they don't pay the money that they owe, or if they don't pay to get the money they need to get back, they'll go to jail.
They'll go to jail. Their IRS is going to be after them.
IRS is after
right.
You,
we all know that's that's a scary thing when you hear that the IRS is coming after you.
I've gotten weird emails before, and actually, I remember. I think our daughter got one, and this was years ago. She was probably 15, 16, and she said, "Is this something I need to be worried about?" She was kind of freaked out. I said, "No. Right. Delete it. It's a scam."
Well, and actually, squirrel moment, George. You mentioned young kids. Exactly. All of these scams that we are talking about that, we worry about our elderly loved ones who we might be caring for. But in this day and age, when every kid out there is walking around with a smartphone and texts can come in and this, that, and the other, the kids need to be careful too. And we need to be mindful of that as well. So, and speaking of children, another type of scam is what we'll call the grandchild scam. So in this one, A person calls claiming to be the target's grandchild, and they say they're in trouble. I don't know if it's so much that they call or maybe they email or text, really, right? Because
I think you can get calls on this too.
Can you?
And I'll
Okay.
tell you why I know that in just a second when you're finished with talking about it.
So the general idea though is that they might say they're in jail or their car broke down or something like that. They're in trouble, and then once again some type of payment has to be sent in order to solve the problem. And I can speak on behalf of Gagi and say that if she thought any of her grandchildren were calling her and were in trouble, she'd be whipping out her debit cards so fast to try to help them. So it's, and it's horrible to think that people get preyed upon like that.
On the flip side of it, they tried to get my mother with this. They tried to get Nana with this. And she told me about it. I don't know. The next time I saw her, she said, I got a call from someone who said they were my grandson. And they needed help, and they were in jail. And she said, I knew it wasn't real, and I told them, well, you're just going to have to rot in jail then.
Which I could totally, right? I could totally see. I'm good for your mom for, being with it enough to pick up on that. And good for her. Good for her.
Now, the rest of these examples are computer or smartphone based, beginning with fake viruses. One of them, you'll be on your phone or your computer and a pop-up will appear and it'll say that your device is infected with a virus. We've all seen this one. Surely we've all seen this one. Another one will say actually that your device's memory is almost out and that it needs to be cleaned up. Now, if you click on the pop-up, instructions will be given to remove the virus or to fix the problem, which of course includes you giving them some money.
Right.
And they really don't do anything because there was never any virus to begin with.
Yeah.
So that happens. It's a pretty common one.
Now, the tech support scam
Support? That's me.
It is you. The tech support scam works, pretty similarly to the virus scam. The target receives a pop-up or an email saying that some kind of upgrade needs to be done to the device. So once again, payment is needed in order to fix the imaginary problem. Or sometimes it's not even payment, right? The whole point is to get them
access
to click
to your computer, for sure.
Yeah, just
and then they can get your credit cards and everything else.
All kinds of information out.
Yeah. Now, if you work in an office, you've likely been warned about this one: email phishing.
Yep, happens all the time.
Yep. In this scam, the target receives an email that looks very legitimate. It might claim to be from Facebook, a bank, a credit card company, your boss even, or any number of other places. It will claim there is a problem with the account, the Facebook, the bank, whatever, or something like that. The goal is to get the target to click on a link to log in. Once that happens, the scammer has access to all kinds of things. It could be your Facebook login. It could be your bank login, which is way worse. And basically they could gain access to your bank account. So obviously that's a bad one.
And not even just emails, by the way. These can come via text. We've had a couple of incidents within the last year where I work where random employees throughout the organization have received a text either from our executive director or our board chairman. They kind of do the, hey, I need something from you.
I was thinking about that while I was reading this because trying to figure out if I could integrate that somewhere. Yes, for sure.
And another one while we're on The Office, because I will totally fess up. And we, of course, do, where I work, we do a ton of, info security and testing of employees and, we do annual, actually probably semi-annual phishing campaigns where we literally test and try to trick employees to see how vigilant they're being about things. I had something really interesting happen back in January when I was off in another state, not embroiled in the middle of the water crisis that was happening here where we live. We talked about that on a previous episode. So I met someone who works in the same industry as I do for the first time. Now I knew this woman's name, but I had never officially met her. So I met her. Hi, how are you? It was very brief. The following week, I received an email at work and it had an attachment and it came from this woman. Mm-hmm. It looked totally official, and it literally, one of the things to look for is what email address is it coming from, or hover over it. It literally was her actual company email address.
Wow.
I clicked on the attachment. I was like, oh, this is odd. But
what do they need from me?
But I just met her. I just saw her at this conference, and
Jennifer,
Yeah.
I need you to go out and buy 10 Apple gift cards for me.
It wasn't that, but I did, I totally fell for it. And of course, I fessed
And
up
you got-
immediately, reported
you
it
got
to
dinged
info
at work.
security. I said, and by the way, later that night, my heart sank when I saw it because I thought something weird happened when I clicked on it. And then my heart sank later that night. There was an email that came from the company where she works that says, hey, her email address was basically spoofed, compromised, and, hopefully you didn't click on the link, which, of course I had.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. But I think you had said before, the whole boss thing, and it can be boss, it could be any number of things, but that particular scam, I mean, I don't know how it would really work with an elderly loved one who doesn't work anymore.
Right.
But if they did it the right way, this particular one, they said, it'll look like it's coming from your boss. And a lot of times it's text on this one. It'll say, hey, it's boss or whatever.
Right.
I need you to, I'm in the middle of a meeting and I need you to run out and grab 10 Apple gift cards for me and just send me the code on the back.
Right.
So I can use them for a presentation.
Right. Well,
that's a common one,
or
really
it
common.
could say, Goggy could get one that says, "Hey, it's Hannah," or "It's Jackson," her grandchildren, saying, "Hey, can you grab me a gift card? I need a gift card for X, Y, or Z."
Right.
I mean,
well, and thankfully, with your mother and my mother, they don't drive, so they're not running out to get
that is
anything.
true.
Thankfully,
that is true.
Although you could do it online, I suppose.
All right, another one is they get you with basically like fake online shopping. So, for example, the target will receive an email or see an ad online that claims to have some type of desirable product at an insanely low price. And I can vouch for that. I mean, Goggy likes to scroll through Facebook and sees ads and et cetera, et cetera.
And she likes a good bargain.
And she likes to shop for that kind of stuff sometimes. The ad might offer ridiculously low prices, though, on, forget shopping for entertainment or for gifts, but on something like prescription drugs, for example. So then when the target tries to buy the item, the scammers then have the target's credit card or bank account information. And of course, the item that's been purchased is never received.
And the fake charity scam uses the same technique, and this is really low.
It's really low.
The end
They're
result,
all really low.
they're basically trying to get you to donate to some thing, and they make it really sad, and you're, puppies and babies and all kinds of stuff. And, the end result, again, they want to get the credit card or bank information so they can steal all of your money.
Yep.
It stinks.
One that's popped up recently, probably a lot of you out there have heard about this one, because I do feel like it has been making
It's a
some
fairly
headlines,
new one.
is tolls. Like, you get a text that claims that you've missed paying some toll and you need to click through on the link and pay it and take care of it. And I just saw this. So my brother and I both, when we go over to mom's, we, pick up her phone. We're not trying to like invade her privacy, but she doesn't even mind. We scroll through her texts. We delete anything that, looks scammy, doesn't look familiar. I go through her Facebook page every now and then and cull down her friends list, because every now and then she clicks on somebody she actually really doesn't know, which we're going to get to that in a minute. But the toll scam I just saw on her phone this week. And what's really interesting about that is, if you've been listening closely to this episode, then you picked up on the fact that my mother doesn't drive.
No.
She was nowhere where she would have gone through a toll that she did not pay. Thankfully, she knew enough. I mean, I saw it and I immediately said, Mom, if you see anything about tolls, you don't click on, no, I know. And the good news is she watches a lot of news. So she actually really had seen that warning, because it has been pretty prominent recently.
Right. And, stuff like this, I'm thankful all the time. My mother does not have a smartphone.
Right.
Her phone can text, but she has no clue how to do it. It's a flip phone. And I don't know. We're all old enough to remember trying to text on flip phones.
my
I
gosh.
never actually did it back in the day, but man, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So I never even bothered teaching her how to do it, because it's just such a hassle. But because of that, she never gets this stuff. And when she moved into assisted living, she decided to get rid of her computer. Never really understood why, because she was pretty good with it, but she just didn't know where to put it. It was a decorating choice.
Right.
But let's talk now about the romance scam. This can be the most expensive of all, because it's a long game. Scammers will reach out to the target on Facebook or other social media and start an online relationship. They will message back and forth with the goal of getting the target to trust them. They may even go as far as to talk on the phone. They will use some kind of excuse that they need money. It could be they're in trouble. It could be they need to pay for a trip to come visit the target. These scams can go on for months, and in the worst situation can cost thousands of dollars, and they are very common.
Yeah,
sad.
It's pretty awful. And
they're preying on lonely people.
It's also why I also am careful to go through my mom's Facebook page and like look at the messages that come through or the friend requests that come through, right? We've all gotten them, the friend requests from the person who has, single or recently divorced and literally has no activity on their page, which you and I know enough to know.
Clad.
Yeah.
Usually.
Well, the men usually are.
I don't know. Well, they're shirtless.
Okay.
Maybe.
Anyway, we digress.
We do.
Speaking of squirrel.
Hi, George.
But yeah, so if you do, if you are caring for someone and you do have, access, again, we're not trying to say you need to invade people's privacy, but if you have access to their phone, hopefully maybe they wouldn't even mind, but, good idea to scroll through your loved ones, if they're using a computer, email, have a smartphone or texting with people. Good idea just to kind of scan every now and then and check on some of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, now that we've run through the most common types of scams, how do you educate your elderly loved one on it so they don't become a target? It can be difficult, particularly if your loved one is cognitively impaired, but you have to try.
So first, teach them if anyone tells them they have to pay in an odd way, like, as we said, a Apple gift card or some kind of weird gift card, it's almost always a scam. I would say 99.999% of the time. You don't pay for things with Apple gift cards. Obviously, the police aren't going to accept Apple gift cards as payment to get somebody out of jail. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. The government isn't going to take them for back taxes. So if anybody asks for that, you can just assume immediately it's a scam.
Yeah, and definitely if they are being asked to act now.
You have to do something right quickly now or you won't get that money.
Just remind them to be suspicious of something like that. The scammers, these really horrible people out there doing these things, they really want you to act before you have time to even think something through. They may even make, threats like saying your loved one or someone else will be thrown in jail if they don't act right now. And I can attest to the fact that is part of the training, info security training that we get where I work. We're all busy, and especially, several on my team, we're here, there, and everywhere all across the state, traveling for all different kinds of reasons. And, so a lot of times some of us are picking up our phone in between work, on the road, whatever, trying to quickly, make sure emails are not piling up. Right. And you sometimes might do something very quickly. Okay, let me just do this and clear it out of my inbox. So that's actually a legitimate, and in fact, the phishing scam that I just referenced earlier, that's actually exactly what happened to me that day. I was trying to get through my email inbox very quickly and I didn't think it through. I had enough of a connection in my head. Oh, I just met this person. Let me click on this and see what this is all about and take care of it. So, everybody should be thinking about with these scams, but particularly your loved ones, your elderly loved ones who might really be susceptible to you better hurry up or, or your grandson's going to get tossed in jail, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Third, tell them to never, ever click on anything on their computer if they're not 100% sure of what it is. This means, if there's a thing that pops up and says your computer's busted, tell them to ask you about it. Tell them, if there's a shopping thing or whatever, take note of it and ask you about it later. Just don't click on anything that you don't know what it is. I mean, obviously, if you're on Facebook, you're more or less safe-ish. But, any place out in the wild, wild west of Google or the web and just by itself, you're going to get these pop-ups and never, ever click on it. It's a tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one to teach.
It is tough. It is tough to teach. So one thing, and I know my brother and I do this with my mom, tell them not to answer their phone if they don't recognize the number. They may not want to miss any phone calls, particularly if they're a bit lonely, but tell them that if someone really needs to get in touch with them, they'll leave a message. Now, I would like to have an addendum to the copious notes here, and that is, and this came into play fairly recently. We did a switch of my mom's health insurance. So over time, right, the numbers that come in from the health insurance or the place where she goes for her, primary care, all these things, like we try to get them programmed in the phone so we, know what the calls are when they come in. However, if you make a switch in insurance or if you switch doctors or if you're in a situation post-skilled nursing facility and you've got PT and OT, coming in, you can't have every number programmed in. And then if you miss calls, it can sometimes be kind of a pain to get back in touch with people. So I find this one to be particularly tricky as well, because we definitely do not want my mom picking up strange phone calls. But also a couple times, like we've missed a couple things that then just created a challenge because we had difficulty getting back in touch with someone we legitimately needed to get in touch with.
And, it's a generational thing. And we talked about this in the technology episode, folks. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. They grew up with the ugly black phone on the counter, had no caller ID. It rang. And when it rang, you answered it. That's just the way it worked.
Yeah,
and so they're kind of trained. When the phone rings, you answer it.
Yeah.
Now, we, as Gen Xers, part of our life, we had caller ID, and we kind of learned that this stuff is out there. And I don't generally answer my phone if I don't recognize the number.
Nothing.
I actually had one earlier today, and I looked at it. Ooh, I better answer this one. And sure enough, it was a work phone call. I just had a feeling, and you get that feeling. But, like our kids, the Gen Zs, they never answer their phones. Seriously, unless it pops up mom or dad. That's it. They don't answer their phones. They avoid talking
on the phone at all costs.
So it's a generational thing for sure. They want to answer their phones.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're some of you out there might be thinking, okay, well, so then tell them not to answer the phone. And if it's a legitimate call, they will leave a voicemail. That is true, except that Gagi is a perfect example of someone who doesn't really know how to check her voicemail.
My mother's isn't even set up. I never set it up.
Yeah. So
just for that hassle, really.
She just, it's too many steps to then get through on the phone app to check the voicemail and listen to it and, to deal with all that. So again, I find this one to be particularly challenging.
That's true. So another thing you can do if you have to, it's extreme. Take away the computers and the smartphone. I hate this. I hate this idea. But when they get to a certain cognitive level, it's probably less safe for them to have it than not have it, particularly if they're living in a place like a nursing home or assisted living or something where they're safe and someone's going to look in on them. But, for some people who have gotten used to carrying this thing around like we all have, really, it's really going to be as bad as taking away the car keys, I really think.
Yeah,
But if your loved one has some type of dementia, they may not be able to identify when they're being scammed. So replacing a smartphone, like my mother has a flip phone. She's never had a smartphone. Well, she briefly had one, and she didn't really know how to use it, and she left it on her counter, and it plugged into the charger, and it ruined the battery, and I said never again. But get a flip phone. There are plenty of companies out there. Jitterbug's one of them, I think, is a company that's out there that they have phones that are meant for elderly folks. Doing a flip phone, it'll remove the internet from the equation.
Yeah.
And that removes a lot of it.
And the texting.
And the texting.
More or less the texting component.
And I do sometimes wish I could text with my mother, or she could text me, hey, when you're on your way over, can you bring a flat of water or whatever? But that convenience is not worth the complications it would bring up.
Agreed. So one final idea, particularly if your loved one does have some type of dementia, and or doesn't drive anymore, and this is also a tough one. It's pretty extreme, but maybe lock up their credit cards and debit cards. If you need to, you might tell them it's just simply so that no one can steal them. Mm-hmm. If they don't leave the house without your help, they really don't need them anyway.
No.
So, I don't feel the need to do that, for example, with Gagi. Not anywhere near that level of concern.
No.
But if I ever, got to that point and my brother and I agreed that was a good idea, maybe for, we still have them if we need them for purchases for her. But, I guess we would do that if we had to.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom has obviously access to hers. And she doesn't leave the assisted living very often, but every couple of weeks or so they go on an outing, they go get lunch or go to the store or whatever, and she uses them and it's all fine. But these last two ideas are extreme, but if you just can't trust your loved one to know a scam, it just might be better safe than sorry.
Yep.
It stinks.
It stinks.
But it's better that than they lose thousands of dollars. Yeah. So, thanks to everybody for listening to this episode. Again, we're introducing you to George, who I'm holding in my hand here. And we'll be talking to George, and I'm sure you'll see more pictures of him. Again, if you haven't seen him on Facebook, go there and look for him. I'm sure we'll post more
Thanks
pictures.
for being with us, George. And at some point, I think
a good boy.
George is going to have a backstory.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
like backstories for our animals in this family. So
absolutely.
Yep.
Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode. If you want to get in touch with us, question, comment, how's your dad? How's your mom? How's your uncle? How's your whoever? You can email us at caregivinggenxstyle@gmail.com. You can send us a text or leave us a voicemail. We love voicemails. 804-723-1221 is the phone number. You can find us on Twitter. The handle is @GenXCaregiving. We're on Blue Sky. Same thing, @GenXCaregiving. And we're also on Facebook. I said it a million times. We post there the most. Look for the link in the show notes to this episode, and you will get there. We hope to hear from you soon. Have a great day.
Good night, everyone.